Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Katarina and welcome to another video in my Christmas card series. In this video and a few next videos, I will be making cards where you don't need any stamps or dies. All you will need is watercolors, some brushes and watercolor cardstock. So if you would like to make your own Christmas cards completely from scratch but you don't want to spend money on stamps or dies, or you need quick last-minute cards, this is definitely for you. I'm not going to be doing anything complicated. I'm a beginner and I'm just experimenting and I'm having fun. In this video, I'm starting very simple. I will be creating 5 easy watercolor background patterns for Christmas. There are way more patterns that you can do, but I'm limiting it to 5. And at the end of the video, I will be showing you what you can do to turn these backgrounds into cards. So let's jump into it. I'm starting with the supplies. The supply list is in the description below, as well as over on my blog. Just keep in mind that you don't need to have the exact brands I'm using here. Whatever you have at home or is in your budget will do. Since I'm watercoloring, I'm going to be using a watercolor cardstock, cold pressed 300 GSM, which is the weight of the cardstock. I pre-cut it into A6 panels using my paper trimmer. If you don't have a paper trimmer, then you can get a watercolor paper pad in the size A5, and when you fold it, you will get the standard A6 card. It is a little bit wasteful, but this way you will not need any card base. Just be careful when folding the watercolor cardstock, as it is a thick paper. Next I have here watercolors. I picked red, green, purple, black and gold. All these colors are from the same set. It's the Gonzai Tambi watercolors from Koretake. I have the set with 36 pans. The box they come in is pretty big, but I still like these watercolors because the pans are big. So you get a lot of paint, plus the colors are really vibrant. And also I have few brushes in different sizes. So these are the main supplies. I also have on the side 2 jars with water and paper towels to soak up excess water, masking tape, white gel pen and so on. Before I started painting, I secured the watercolor panels onto a corkboard using a painter's tape. You can also use a washi tape. This prevents warping and also creates a nice straight border. If you don't have such board, you can also use a cutting board or a book. I could have also taped the panels onto my craft mat, but I prefer the board as you can move it around. But I did use the craft mat to attach the tape, so it's straight and all the sides are the same. So let's start with the first 2 backgrounds. I will probably have to speed it up by quite a bit, but I will try not to do it too fast. I never know if it's too fast, so if I'm going through the painting too quickly, let me know in the comments. However, these patterns are very straightforward. The first background is super simple. I'm using a flat brush for this, but you can also use a round brush if you don't have a flat brush. I'm using a red paint for this one. I took my brush and dipped it into the paint and I painted simple horizontal lines, one after the other, super easy. I will come back to this red striped panel once it's dry and I will add few details. For the second panel, I'm going to be doing diagonal stripes. I'm using a round brush for it and a green paint. I added a clean water into the pan with the paint using my brush just to activate it. I did this every time. The background is again super easy. If you think the paint is not vibrant enough, you can always come back and add second layer. You can use different colors. There are so many options and I really had to restrict myself to a few colors just not to overcomplicate it. And I let both pieces fully air dry. Before I move to the third background, let's add few little details to the background with the red lines. You can of course leave it as it is, but I wanted to add few little details. I'm using a white gel pen. This one is the Jelly Roll 0.8. I also tried a Uniball pen, but for some reason it didn't work. And I started with adding dots across the top line. And for the next line, I drew snowflakes. I had to look up how to draw a snowflake, so let me show you the easiest way how to paint it. I'm using here my gold paint because the gel pen did not work for some reason, but it doesn't matter. First, I drew a vertical line and then 2 diagonal lines on each side that are crossing the vertical line in the middle. And then I drew some V's on each line. On the stripy background, my snowflakes were tiny, so I could do only 1 V. But on this example, the snowflake is quite big, so I added 2 V's on each of the lines. You could also add a hexagon shape in the middle if you want. And that's my simple snowflake. Also, this panel with the snowflake could make a nice Christmas card as well. Just add a sentiment and the card is done. But back to the details on the red stripes. I drew one row with the dots, one with the snowflakes, then 2 rows with the dots just to make it easier and faster, and then snowflakes again. And I repeated this pattern. You can also do dashes or one or multiple lines, hearts, stars, Christmas trees. It's all up to you. For the next panel, I'm going to use purple and gold paints, and I'm going to do horizontal lines again, but this time I will do different thicknesses of the lines. The purple will be a little bit thicker using a size 10 round brush, and the golden line will be thinner. I think the brush is in the size 4. The way I chose my brushes is simple. I used a piece of a scratch watercolor cardstock and I painted a stripe. If I liked the size and the look of it, I used it, and if I didn't, I chose another brush. As you see, I was switching between 1 and 2 golden stripes in between the purple stripes, so you definitely can do different versions of this depending on the look you are going for. Again, after I was finished with the background, I let it to dry. The last 2 patterns are simple plaid patterns, at least I think it's plaid. If not, let me know in the comments. I'm going to use a black and gold paint on the first one and green, red and gold on the second. I'm also going to be using the flat brush I used earlier and 2 smaller round brushes in the size 1 and 0. These are very small brushes. For the first plaid background, I'm starting first with the horizontal stripes, and I'm leaving quite a bit of space between the stripes, bigger space than I did on the red stripy background, because when I paint the vertical stripes, I want the white space to be squares about 1 centimeter big. Also, I wanted the stripes to be at least semi-dry before painting the next layer, because on my trial cards the stripes weren't fully dry and they were mixing together. So I will be switching between those 2 panels, and I hope it's not going to be too confusing. For the second plaid background, I'm starting with the green paint, and with the flat brush starting in the middle, I did 1 diagonal stripe. Starting in the middle makes it easier to do the side strokes. To make sure the diagonal strokes are the same angle, I used a ruler to help me with that. I just put the ruler next to the middle stripe and I moved it up or down. It was just a guide to help me to paint the stripe. You could also use a pencil and lightly draw a line, but I'm not trying to make a perfect line. I just wanted the angle to be the same. Next, I went back to the panel with the black stripes and I painted the vertical lines or horizontal lines. It depends if you are making horizontal or vertical cards. All these panels I'm making are for side-folding vertical cards, so these stripes are technically vertical even though I'm painting them horizontally. The lines are not super straight, but that's what I actually like about these backgrounds, all these imperfections. After the lines were dry, on the green striped panel, I painted the diagonal green lines the opposite direction, pretty much doing the same as I did on the other stripes, starting in the middle and then painting in the side lines using my ruler as a guide, just to have them on the same angle as the middle line. Now working on the green striped panel, I'm going to use the red paint and the round brush in the size 1, and I'm going to paint thinner lines between the green stripes. Again, the lines are not perfect, they are slightly wobbly. I always admire people with bullet journals when they draw straight lines. I always need to use a ruler. But here a little bit of wobble is not bad, or at least I don't mind. What is more important, I was trying to be very careful when going over the green lines. Sometimes the brush picked up the green color, and because green and red create muddy colors, I cleaned the brush on a piece of kitchen roll before continuing the line. I let it dry and I worked on the last step on the black striped panel. I used the gold paint and the brush in the size 0. This is a very small brush, and I drew golden lines across the middle of each black line. I painted 1 solid stripe, but you can also do a dash line or dots. You could also paint a line between the black stripes, and of course you can use different colors. So for the last step on the background with the green and red stripes, I also used the golden paint and I painted a dash line across the green stripes. I could have painted a solid line, but the dash line was way easier and quicker. I like all the backgrounds I made, but I think this one is my absolute favorite, especially with the colors green, red and gold. You could not get more Christmassy. I finished the golden dash line and I let it dry. So now all the backgrounds are done. Let me first get through all of them and then I will show you how to turn them into cards. I'm starting with the purple and gold stripe background. Then here is the green, red and gold plaid. Next is the simple red striped background. I really like the little white details. I think it looks quite Nordic. Then the simple one with the green diagonal stripes, super easy and quick to make. And lastly, the black plaid background with the golden stripes. I think all the backgrounds look very nice and I'm definitely getting the Christmas vibes. But what do you do with them? How do you make them into cards? Let me show you a few examples. It doesn't matter on which of the backgrounds you do any of these, it's all up to you. First, you can just add a sentiment and nothing else. I have 3 options here. Starting with writing your own sentiment, here I used a black cardstock and I wrote the Merry Christmas sentiment with a white gel pen. If you don't have a black cardstock, you can also paint a piece of watercolor cardstock black and then write the sentiment. I cut the sentiment into 2 pieces and I adhered it in the middle of the panel using a foam tape so it's a little bit raised. Next, if you have stamps, you can stamp a sentiment. I stamped the sentiment with a black ink. Red would be also very nice, but I don't have a red ink. And I also adhered it on top of the panel using a foam tape. And the stamp I use for the sentiment is from this stamp set from Avery Elle and it's called the Noel. On my last example with using only sentiments, I did something similar I did on the first one, but I used here a label maker. The label maker is from Dymo and it embosses the letters. This is definitely a great and inexpensive option if you don't have stamps. You can adhere it directly on top of the panel, but because I wanted to adhere it using a foam adhesive, I adhered the Dymo pieces on top of a black cardstock first. This way it was more firm. You could also use dies for the sentiment, that would definitely look good, but I don't have a die cutting machine at the moment. And if you have a printer that can print on a thicker cardstock, you could also print out a sentiment. For the last 2 backgrounds, I also added images and I'm using stamps here. I stamped this image with Christmas stocking, I cut it with my scissors and I adhered it on top of the panel using a foam tape. I did not do any coloring as the background is colorful enough. And the sentiment I wrote by hand using a gel pen and I cut it into a small strip. The stamp with the stocking is from the stamp set Sweet and Treats by Create a Smile. If you don't have stamps, you can also draw something yourself or print it out. If your printer doesn't print on a thicker cardstock, you can also use a printer paper and trace it onto the watercolor cardstock. If you don't know how to trace an image, I will leave a link in the description to a video about how to do it. And my last option I have for you for what you can do with such backgrounds is this one. Here I used an image with a poinsettia and I also colored it using the red watercolor paint. Since the background is black, the color did not overwhelm it. I heat embossed the sentiment with a gold embossing powder, but stamping it black on a white piece of cardstock, I think that would also look good. The stamp with the poinsettia is from the stamp set Elsa's Flora by Weenie and Walter. But you can use any kind of image you have. This is just what I had in my stash. So these are all the backgrounds I have for you and what you can do with them. If you make something similar, don't forget to tag me on Instagram and make sure you follow me on Instagram as well. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Because in my next video, I'm going to be painting a row of trees I constantly see people doing on Instagram, which you don't want to miss because it's a fun technique. And if you would like to have more inspiration right now, in my Holiday Card Series 2018, I hand painted 2 very simple versions of a Christmas tree. The video should be showing on your screens now, and if not, I will leave the link to it in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.